The button we're going to make today is from my latest book, Celestial Ring Buttons. This book has 24 unique designs using Dorset button techniques. However, there are some additional, more advanced techniques being looked at in this book. Two of them we're going to look at in this video. The first, changing direction, which is what enables us to get, for instance, this little moon shape. And the other is working with 2 layers. As far as I'm aware, working with 2 layers was first published by the Italian button artist Rosella Lavarini. And I apologize if I've said her name incorrectly. This method is really, really fun. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it is great to expand your design possibilities. For this particular video and button, I am using a 25mm brass ring, and I'm using Wonderfil Eleganza cotton perle in a size 8. You can get the book and materials over on our website at Gina-B silkworks.co.uk. In order to save time, I have already done the preliminary work for this Dorset button. So, just to recap, I have cast the ring, and that is, I have covered the ring in blanket stitches. I've slicked the edge, which is to turn that ridge from the blanket stitch to the back of the ring. I've laid my spokes, which for this particular design, I've laid 6 wraps so that I end up with 12 spokes, and the spokes are what radiate from the center out. I have centered, so I've popped a couple of stitches there to hold it in the center. And now I'm ready to begin the filling for this particular design. And so now I need to work reverse backstitch over 1 for 3 rows. So what is a reverse backstitch as opposed to working a rounding backstitch over 2? I'll bring up a graphic of the reverse backstitch. And a reverse backstitch basically is that you come up you come back over the 2, go down, and then come up again. So you're working over 1 stitch. Now a rounding back stitch over 2 is pretty much the same visually, but you work in the opposite direction, so it does actually change. It's hard to sort of make that distinction, and honestly, if you do the other stitch, it won't matter that much. What we're looking for is a flat face at the front of the button. So I will go ahead and work these 3 rows and come back to you. Here are my 3 rows of reverse backstitch complete. Reverse backstitch gives you a flat face at the front of your button. If you turn it over, you'll see the ridges that you would normally see on an ordinary Dorset button. So you've just basically reversed it. When I say over 1 in an instruction, it is because you are only wrapping the 1 spoke at the back. I have taken my length of thread and I've brought it under the ridges towards the center. I'm going to keep this thread on for the next stages. Now, you may find it difficult to do that. I'm just going to sort of hold it off to the side as I work. It really does depend on yourself. I know that because there's more filling to happen with this color, it'll be a little bit easier to keep both on but you can get into a bit of a tangle, and I probably will. So just decide what's best for you. So I've taken my second color. I'm just going to put a little knot on the end and do the easy way of joining on. And I'm just going to slide my thread underneath some of those central stitches. And then I can go ahead and work the next part of the instruction. And so the next part of the instruction is for color 2, reverse over 1, but only on the front spokes for 8 spokes. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you look carefully at your button, you will have a spoke at the front and a spoke at the back. So if I were to put a nice bright needle, you can see that there's the front spokes and there's the back spokes. And so for this design, we want to work only over the front spokes. This will all become clear in a little bit. And we're going to work over 8 of those. So I'm going to come up, let's say there, it doesn't matter where. And when I work the reverse, I'm going to tuck my needle only under the top spoke. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now we need to change direction. Now, changing direction, it can be done any number of different ways. I personally like to try to keep it so that my thread will still sit in the same place. So if you can see that that thread is wrapped there, with the one in the next section is above it. So now I like, if I'm reversing, that I will work it so that it changes and is at the top of that. I hope this will become clearer when I'm actually working it. But you can change direction any way that you wish, whatever sort of makes it easiest for you. And in some buttons, at some sections, you might find it more difficult to be really precise with changing your direction. The important thing is to try to remember to just work through the top spokes. So we're going to reduce it this time, whereas we did 8 last time, we're going to do 7 this time. Now, because that one's underneath, effectively, I haven't wrapped that one, so that could be where the 7 comes in. It doesn't matter which side you do it on. And then for the last one, I'm just tucking under that. Okay, and then we're going to change direction and work over 6. So I'm saying that that one isn't worked. So there are our 3 rows. So we've gone over 8, we've gone over 7, we've gone over 6. Now we're going to pass under the spokes to the first worked. Now we started over here. So we've got two choices here. We can literally go right across to the first one, or we can choose to work backward from this one here. So I've wrapped, I'm going to come under this one. It'll just make for a tidier finish, but if you wish, you can go straight across. And now I'm going to work over the 8 again. So all of these, which should result in a bit of a point at these ends and a bit thicker at the top, okay? So again, I'm going to take it so that the thread aligns in the correct place with regards to however you do your rounding back stitch. You'll find it will be different your first row if you're left-handed, if you work in a different direction. And then all the way down to the first one worked here. Get those lined up. And there you have your little moon. So I'm going to finish off, fasten off my light color, and I'm just going to take it under some of those stitches at the back, but bearing in mind that I don't want to come up. Now of course you can do this really neat and tidily, and if you want to know different ways in which you can add colors and add them quite nicely, I will leave a link to my video about changing colors and adding thread. But I'm going to do the quick and cheerful way, and that's simply passing the threads through, tying a little knot at the center. So now I'm going back to color 1. And now I need to work the reverse back stitch over 1 to fill, okay? But what I'm going to do is that when I reach the moon, I will work only on the back spokes. Now there's a couple here that when I changed direction, I went under both. Don't worry about it. But what will happen when you do this, so let's start there, is that you'll get a nice even finish, and you can really emphasize the point. Hang on, I'm going to actually go under that one. You can emphasize the point then of your moon, and that will help it to stand out. So I've gone with this one, I'm just passing over the bottom thread first. Now you will probably find it easiest to turn your button around and then just basically work your ordinary rounding back stitch, not your reverse back stitch, from the back. So we're basically working 2 layers. And then flip over again. And join them up at the front again. And you'll continue to do that to fill the whole button and to fill the space. And then when you're alongside the color, you can go over both spokes, but when it's reaching out, as it were, so it's filling a larger space, you then would take it to the back and only go under the back spokes. This has a real added advantage in that you can end up with a really neat and tidy looking back of your button, and people will be quite perplexed on how you did it if they don't realize the trick. And a lot of them will think that you've actually embroidered onto the face of your button. So I'll just do that so you can see. So that's what's happening. I'm starting to fill this section, and then underneath the second color is also being filled. And then when I get to the rows that are here, I will just work over both spokes, which will help to strengthen up the button face. So I will carry on doing that. And so there is the completed moon with the background. And to show you the back, you can just, if you look closely, you can see that there is a small section where the stitches seem a little closer to you than deep, if that makes sense. And that's just where the 2 layers are. And so that's a really nice way to be able to work something a little bit off center with your back and forths, and then in the 2 layers to make a really neat button. So last but not least, to just finish off this little starry sky, let's add a few single stitches using the light color. Now, another little hint for you is if you are adding French knots or little stitches or anything into a button, a Dorset button in particular, try to use a pointed needle. Okay, so I'm going to come up randomly, it doesn't matter where, and try to come up and split the thread, just as if you were adding beads into the face of the button. If you saw my how to add beads video, which again I'll link that below. And then if you split the threads, you can make little tiny stitches, but they're not going to drop through to the bottom. And you can make these stitches, you know, double stitches, single stitches. You can make them a little bit bigger than I'm doing if you wish. Just basically have yourself some stitches to be your stars. If you're very clever and you like constellations, you could possibly put little designs of stars in there. But a few random dots will do just nicely. And so a little starry sky. Of course, adding all of those little stitches does rather mess up the tidiness of the back, but it's worth it. Just adds a nice little extra sparkle. You could be very, very careful and thread through underneath the ribs if you really, really wanted to. I leave that up to you. And so I hope you enjoyed learning about how you can change direction when you're working on a Dorset button and how you can work with 2 layers. Thanks very much for watching. Do please click like, hit subscribe. Really, really helps the channel if you click subscribe and ring that notification bell. And thank you to all of you who are regular subscribers. I really appreciate it. Leave me a comment, and until the next time, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.